In the age when Rome ruled the world, a Greek historian from Sicily embarked on an extraordinary journey to chronicle the entirety of human civilization, from its mythical origins to his own time. Diodorus Siculus spent years in Egypt, from 60 to 56 BCE, questioning priests, recording their ancient traditions, and preserving stories that stretched back thousands of years before his time. The priests told their stories guarded for millennia, passed down through lines of temple keepers. Among these was the tale of Ausar, whom the Greeks called Osiris, the murdered god, the lord of eternity. This was no mere myth. It told how humanity learned agriculture, discovered wine, and built cities. Diodorus recorded what the priests told him, sometimes as sacred mystery. Ausar became Osiris, became Dionysus. This is that story, as preserved by an ancient historian who dared to write down the divine. Ausar, they say, founded in the Egyptian Thebaid, a city with 100 gates, which the men of his day named after his mother. Though later generations called it Diospolis, and some named it Thebes.
There is no agreement, however, as to when this city was founded.
Not only among the historians, but even among the priests of Egypt themselves. For many writers say that Thebes was not founded by Ausar, but many years later by a certain king, of whom we shall give a detailed account in connection with his period. Ausar, they add, also built a temple to his parents, Zeus and Hera, which was famous both for its size and its costliness in general. And 2 golden chapels to Zeus, the larger one to him as god of heaven, the smaller one to him as former king and father of the Egyptians, in which role he is called by some Ammon. He also made golden chapels for the rest of the gods mentioned above, allotting honors to each of them and appointing priests to have charge over these. Ausar and Auset accorded esteem to those who should invent any of the arts or devise any useful process. Consequently, since copper and gold mines had been discovered in the Thebaid, they fashioned implements with which they killed the wild beasts and worked the soil, and thus, in eager rivalry, brought the country under cultivation. And they made images of the gods and magnificent golden chapels for their worship.
But before the great city rose, before the civilizer became king,
Ausar, they say, was also interested in agriculture. And was reared in Nysa, a city of Arabia Felix near Egypt, and being a son of Zeus, and the name which he bears among the Greeks is derived both from his father and from the birthplace, since he is called Dionysus. Mention is also made of Nysa by the poet in his hymns, to the effect that it was in the vicinity of Egypt, when he says, "There is a certain Nysa, mountain high, with forests thick,
in Phoenike afar, close to Egyptus' streams."
He discovered the vine near Nysa, and having further devised the proper treatment of its fruit,
He was the first to drink wine, and taught mankind at large the culture of the vine and the use of wine, as well as the way to harvest the grape and to store wine.
Tehuti was most honored. He was endowed with ingenuity to improve the social life of man.
The gift of wine was but one marvel, for Ausar was not alone in his genius. The greatest mind of the age stood beside him.
It was by Tehuti, according to them, that the common language of mankind was first articulated.
And that many objects, which were still nameless, received an appellation. That the alphabet was invented to establish a wrestling school and to give thought to the rhythmical movement of the human body.
He was the first also to observe the arrangement of the stars and the harmony of the musical sounds.
And that ordinances regarding the honors and offerings due to the gods were duly established.
He also made a lyre and gave it 3 strings, imitating the seasons of the year.
With wisdom secured and civilization's tools forged, the time had come to share these gifts with all humanity.
The olive tree also, they claim, was his discover, not Athena's, as the Greeks say.
Ausar chose him as priestly scribe, seeking his counsel above that of all others.
He taught the Greeks deep thought, and it was for this reason that he was given the name Tehuti.
The high from the summer, the low from the winter, and the medium from the spring.
Or he adopted 3 tones, a high, a low, and a medium.
Of Ausar they say that, being of a beneficent turn of mind,
Hold it to be the strongest oath when a man swears by Ausar, who lieth in Philae.
Of these gods. It is for this reason that travelers are.
O great Ausar, hear our cry. We call upon your name.
Over these bowls, fill them each day with milk, singing all. Libation bowls which are placed around it, for the priests appointed.
The priests of Egypt, and to the 360.
Rise, Ausar. Your kingdom awaits. Before the sacred boundary, touched by the light of Ausar, the Avenger Queen takes flight.
Which is called Philae, but is referred to because of this.
On the island in the Nile, which lies near the city. Not in Memphis, but on the border between Egypt and Ethiopia. To some writers, however, the bodies of these 2 gods rest.
Hail Ausar, the great god. Hail Ausar, king of silence.
We praise you, Ausar and Auset. May your light shine upon us forever. Immortal honors, and was buried near Memphis, where her shrine is.
Her husband she also, when she passed from among men, received. And surpassing all sovereigns in benefactions to her subjects, and like.
So it is decreed.
Life reigning over the land, with complete respect for the law, never to marry another man, and passed the remainder of her. Auset, they say, after the death of Ausar, took a vow.
The murdered god lived forever in worship and memory, while his queen faced the burden of earthly rule alone.
Ek, swipe. Enk duo, ek.
Labor from which mankind profits. With both the sowing of the seed and with every agricultural. Aid to those who discovered the fruit of the grain, in connection.
The Egyptians, since these animals had, more than any others, rendered and worship of them as gods were introduced generally among all.
The sacred bulls, which are given the names Apis and Menevis.
Them the mourning for Ausar. The consecration to Ausar, however, of him, and, when these die, renews in the funeral rites for
District pays honors to the animals which were originally consecrated to.
Each group of priests supposes that Ausar lies buried in there. Suggested. It is for this reason that even to this day, well, by their own profit, did everything just as Auset had. Well, by their own profit, did everything just as Auset had.
To please the queen who was petitioning them, and incited as. You will heed my words, for the glory of Thebes depends on it.
To please the queen who was petitioning them.
It is said, being mindful of the benefactions of Ausar and eager. Of the worship and service of the gods. And the priests, it is
them, the third part of the country, to defray the cost.
These honors by the incentive of their own profit also, she gave.
Him. And since Auset wished to induce the priests to render
it the same kind of funeral as they had given to.
They had formerly rendered to Ausar, and upon its death, accord.
Native to their district, pay it while living the honors which. To him also someone that they might choose of the animals. And pay honors to him as to a god, and to consecrate.
She exhorted them to bury his body in their own district. The body, and after reminding them of the benefactions of Ausar, said that she was consigning to them alone the burial of. To them, and taking each group of them apart privately, she revealed to no one the trust which she was going to confide.
The knowledge I impart must remain hidden, guarded by your lives.
Group, she required all of them an oath that they would. About the size of Ausar, then summoning the priests group by. Goes. She fashioned out of spices and wax a human figure. Following manner. Over each piece of the body as the account.
The inhabitants of Egypt, she fulfilled her purpose. In somewhat that her husband should remain secret, and yet be honored by all. The body, except the privates. And wishing that the burial place of the was punished by Heracles. Now Auset recovered all the pieces of.
Its name from that of Antaius, a contemporary of Ausar.
Who, they say, lies on the Arabian side of the river and derives
of the Nile, near the village now known as Antaius, which
queen over Egypt. The struggle between them took place on the banks.
Her son Heru, and after slaying Set and his accomplices, became
steadfast supporters and defenders of his rule. But Auset, the sister, and felt that in this way he would have in them.
Since he wanted all of them to share in the pollution. And gave one portion to each of the band of conspirators. Then divided the body of the slain man into 26 pieces. Murdered by his brother Set, a violent and impious man. Set.
Ausar was ruling over Egypt as its lawful king. He was.
The many. This is the story as they give it. When
through some of their number, this hidden knowledge was published too.
Be divulged. In the course of years, it came about that.
Received the account of his death as a matter not to.
Although the priests of Ausar had, from the earliest times,
at the height of glory, in the moment of triumph, darkness waited. Glory to the god triumphant. Ausar reigns forever.
Ausar rises. The kingdom thrives. Eternal legacy, forever strong.
Hail the divine king, master of all the world.
Magnifying in this way the power of the god. Instituted rites for him, and introduced many things of a mystic nature.
From Auset and Tehuti sacrifices and every other highest honor. These also.
From the midst of men into the company of the gods, and received. Equal to that offered to the gods of heaven. After this, he passed.
Received the gift of immortality with the approval of all men and honor.
Orphans from every quarter. And by reason of the magnitude of his benefactions, his return to Egypt he brought with him the very greatest presents. Barley, which is little inferior to wine in aroma and strength.
Not admit of the growing of vine, he introduced the drink prepared from
the fruits which are most easily cultivated, and if any country did, the care of agriculture in Attica. Finally, Ausar in this way visited of Macedonia, which was named after him, while to Triptolemus he assigned, which he called Maronea. Macedon his son, moreover, he left as king of that land, and caused him to found a city to bear his name.
There to supervise the culture of the plants which he introduced into.
Opposed his undertaking, and Maron, who was now old, he left. In Thrace he slew Lycurgus, the king of the barbarians, who
other nations of Asia as well, and crossed into Europe at the Hellespont.
Him inscribed pillars telling of his campaign. And he visited all the
Ausar also took an interest in hunting elephants, and everywhere left behind. From the rising sun to the setting sun, no land remained untouched by his beneficence.
To lay claim to the god and say that he was by birth a native of India.
In that country, which have led the Indians of a later time,
is in this region, and many other signs of his stay he left. The plant to this day is still to be found only.
The Indian Nysa, and throughout India and those countries which border upon. In Egypt, where he had been reared. He also planted ivy in the he named Nysa, wishing to leave there a memorial of that city.
he also founded not a few cities in India, one of which
sea as far as India and the limits of the inhabited world. He continued his march through Arabia, along the shore of the Red.
it might be needed through gates which he had built. After this, form stagnant pools over the land to its detriment. But that
by dikes on both banks, so that at flood time it might not.
Now when Ausar arrived at the borders of Ethiopia, he curbed the river.
With Egypt saved, Ausar's mission continued. The great work of civilization spread across continents. They said his reign was divine, his wisdom unmatched. From symposium to theater, the myth.
They tried to bury him, but the gods willed otherwise. Ausar lived.
The story of Heracles and the eagle spreading through the Greek world. History becoming legend, becoming myth.
This is how history becomes legend, my friends. Ausar, crowned in gold and lapis.
Heracles, your heroic deeds have brought glory to our land. We dedicate these temples in your name.
Behold the legacy of Nilius, whose name is etched forever into the heart of Egypt.
I present to you King Nilius. His reign marks a new era.
Bears it received from the former king Nilius.
Into the sea. Its last name, and that which the river now.
Early times was the trading port of Egypt, that the river empties.
For it is at Thonis, as it is called, which in the...
When he writes, "On the river Aegyptus my curved ships I stayed, of the land." And the poet also adds his testimony to this.
Oceanus. Then, because of this flood, they say, it was called Aetus.
In the earliest period bore the name Oceanae, which in Greek is.
Killed the eagle which was devouring the liver of Prometheus, the river.
Worked the incident into a myth to the effect that Heracles had.
River back into its former course. Consequently, certain of the Greek poets,
Manly spirit, speedily stopped the flood at its breach and turned the...
intent upon great enterprises, and eager for the reputation of a thing.
Willfully, because its water sweeps down so swiftly and with such violence.
Was so grieved that he was on the point of quitting life. Was governor, and since practically everything in this district was destroyed, Prometheus. A large section of Egypt, and covered especially that part where Prometheus. The river is usually at flood, breaking out of its banks, inundated.
At the time of the rising of Sirius, which is the season when
While Ausar and his army were thus employed, the Nile, they say,
while Ausar brought civilization to distant lands, Egypt herself faced nature's wrath.
Move the baskets quickly but carefully. Scribe, confirm the count for the Eastern Province. Next basket, quickly now. The gods have blessed us with abundance. Scribe, record this amount immediately. Ensure every basket is weighed before it enters the storehouse.
the scrolls are updated, Governor.
Oversee the collection with wisdom, governors. This surplus guarantees the future of our kingdom.
Receive this staff and seal. Govern the southern regions with wisdom and strength.
By the grace of the gods, I bestow upon you the seal of authority. Rule with wisdom
and collect the tribute.
And founded some notable cities, and then left behind him men to govern the country.
As a god because of his benefactions. In Ethiopia, he instructed the inhabitants in agriculture.
Nor did he have to organize pitched battles or engagements, since every people received him.
As for the satyrs, they were taken along in the campaign because they were proficient in dancing and singing and every kind of relaxation and pastime. For Ausar was not warlike.
The account goes, was Apollo, who was for that reason also given the name Musagetes.
Maidens being those who among the Greeks are called the Muses, and their leader, As. Among whom were 9 maidens who could sing, and were trained in the other arts, these.
And fond of music and the dance. Consequently, he took with him a multitude of musicians,
brought to him, who, they say, have hair upon their loins. For Ausar was laughter-loving, their return home. While he was in Ethiopia, their account continues, the Satyr people were the Egyptians until recent times, and why those who journeyed abroad let their hair grow until.
And this is the reason why this custom with regard to their hair was observed among.
Let his hair grow until his return to Egypt, and then made his way through Ethiopia.
All his preparations had been completed. Ausar made a vow to the gods that he would.
In the sowing of grain, and in every step in the harvesting of it. And when you
were experienced in agriculture, such as Maron in the cultivation of the vine, and Triptolemus. Every temple but have also named a city after him in the Thebaid, called by thee.
Egyptians, for the inhabitants of the land have not only set up statues of him at.
He also took Pan along on his campaign, who is held in special honor by the fir.
And it is for this reason that these animals are held in honor among the Egyptians.
Of the men, Anubis wearing a dog's skin, and Macedon the foreparts of a wolf.
Notable accoutrements of war, taken from certain animals whose character was not unlike the boldness.
Anubis and Macedon, who were distinguished for their valor. Both of them carried the most. Now Ausar was accompanied on his campaign, as the Egyptian account goes, by his 2 sons, while Ausar brought civilization to distant lands. Egypt herself faced nature's wrath.
No conqueror travels alone. Those who would change the world must gather the brave, the wise, and the inspired.
The ancients assigned evergreen plants to gods, myrtle to Aphrodite, laurel to Apollo, divine life unending. The ivy is called the plant of Ausar, and for purposes of dedication is preferred, since it remains evergreen.
Ausar also discovered ivy, and this is why they say Dionysus did the same. The Greeks copied Ausar.
A garland of which all men place about the head of this god, above all others.
And it was Apollo, they say, who discovered the laurel.
Taking in his company also his brother, whom the Greeks call Apollo.
Then he himself left Egypt with his army to make his campaign,
and Antiochus over those adjoining Ethiopia and Libya.
While as governors he appointed Busiris over those parts of Egypt which lie towards Phoenicia and border upon the sea, who was both his kinsman and renowned for his valor and physical strength.
And as general of all the land, under his sway, he left Heracles, because his prudence raised him above the king's other friends.
They say that he placed Tehuti at her side as counselor. And turned the supreme power over to Auset, his wife. Now, after Ausar had established the affairs of Egypt, have honored those who introduced them as gods most illustrious. because of the delight which they take in the foods which were discovered.
Or Havrol were News, but all succeeding generations as well,
Since not only the men of his time who received his gift, and this did in fact take place because of the magnitude of his benefactions. He would receive immortal honors
and adopt a gentle manner of life. For he supposed that if he made men civilized, and sow wheat and barley,
and teaching the race of men how to cultivate the vine,
with the intention of visiting all the inhabited earth.
He gathered together a great army.
And eager for glory.